Hey everyone, it's Kristen. So last time we talked about this issue and we ended on who is Mr. Meeker. So in this issue, we find out, issue 9, we find out who he is. So there's kind of a nod to something happening. Because you see Quasar on the front. I mean, I always want to say Kazar, but that is not right because Kazar is in the Savage language with Zabu. But anyway, Quasar. So if I mispronounce it Quasar throughout talking about this issue, just know I know that it's, Quasar. It just, like I said. So it says in the depths of Project Pegasus, Dazzler Unleashed. So this was a really interesting issue because, and I had totally forgotten about this one, and I I feel like this isn't talked about enough because this was kind of a pivotal moment in Dazzler's, growth. I mean, by the caption, by the caption of this video, I'm sure kind of like have a hint of what's going on, but like you don't know if you haven't read this issue in a long time, you don't know how or why or what's going on. It just, like I said, I'm surprised this issue isn't talked about more in terms of kind of being a pivotal moment in Dazzler's, especially her early career or life, I should say. Okay, so anyway, Dazzler's in the car with the guy that grabbed her and Mr. Meeker. And she's like, this is kind of weird. Like, how do they know about my powers? How did they get those sunglasses that protect them from my powers? They have guns. What is going on? So, and I noticed something else in this issue. I'm like, oh, okay. So the other guy that kidnapped Dazzler calls the driver X-23, or mentions X-23, doesn't call him X-23, but mentions X-23, incorporating modification X-23. Just, of course, when you hear X-23, you think of X-23, Laura. So it's interesting that they would even mention that specific, like, numeric, you know, code, so to speak, in this issue. Because, of course, came way later. It's just interesting that it's even, because it could have been anything. They could have picked any set of letters and numbers, so it's just interesting that they picked that. So anyway, so Dazzler's like, you've been following me around for weeks, haven't you? And he was like, yes, I have. I mean, I had to, wait for the right moment, and I was kind of studying you. And so basically they get to this drop-off point. They get in the helicopter. Dazzler starts to freak out, thinking Mr. Meeker's driving them into the side of the mountain. Mountain opens up, like in X-Men, the animated series, and they go in. It's like, it's a hangar door. And Dazzler's like, what the heck, what is the heck is going on here? Like, what am I doing here? And they're like, we are Project Pegasus. Basically, it's a collaboration between NASA, Agents of Shield, and the Air Force, and they are trying to find alternative means of power, like fuel and stuff. Yeah, for alternative sources of fuel, energy, for the U.S. And so here's their chief of security is Quasar, whose real name is Wendell something. Wendell Vaughn, I want to say. That could. I mean, I don't think Vaughn's right. I know it starts with a V, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce it. So anyway, Wendell. Um, So he was in the army and then he went through SHIELD training, but they said he wouldn't be a good field agent because he didn't have he lacked like the killer instinct that other agents had. So he was sent to like Stark International to guard these quantum bands that they were studying. And this other guy who was a Shield agent and was like the top, top tech person in Shield, or one of the top tech agents, he was testing the quantum bands. And like, I forgot his name, and pretty much, well, I'm sorry to say his name isn't that important, because he was testing the quantum bands, put them on, and then freaked out because he couldn't figure out how to get them off, and he accidentally disintegrated himself. So, and then a little while later, I think AIM broke in to try to steal the quantum bands, and Wendell put them on. And he actually, because he didn't have that killer instinct, he was able to control them. And he also, of course, figured out how to use them pretty fast, like it was a crash course to fight AIM. So then he became the basically, what's it called? Like chief security officer of Project Pegasus. So that's how he ended up there. And his, well, he kind of explains his power to Dazzler later, but it's the bands like allow him to access like quantum energy, like energy from a quasar. And he uses that energy, absorbs it, and can redirect it, or he can use it to create like solid objects and stuff. So, basically, they blackmail Dazzler saying, hey, it'd be kind of sad if the press learned, that you're a mutant. And she's like, that's blackmail. You can't do that. And they're like, well, we don't want to blackmail you, but we need to study you, and you will get paid $8 a day, which is nothing. And Dazzler's like, well, I guess I have no choice then. And they're like, wonderful. Allow us to introduce you to Wendell, whatever his last name is. Like I said, I don't think it's Vaughn. It starts with the V. I know that for sure. But anyway. And Dazzler's like, wow, he's cute. He's good looking. And she's like, it makes me, look at Paul as Paul, the doctor, not Paul, like this good looking guy. So anyway, I mean, I guess, he would be more impressive than Paul. I mean, look, he's more muscular and has like this costume superhero look. I mean, I get it. So he takes Dazzler, shows around like the anti-gravity chamber, which is basically what it is. This telescope that lets them see, distant planets and stuff. And then takes her to the most interesting part of the facility, the prison. And this is Solar, and he actually absorbs like solar energy. And he was in a episode of X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, or the animated series, the like Secrets No Longer Buried with Cyclops, where he goes to that town and in search of the doctor, and everyone's like real skittish around him, like doesn't want to talk and sort of thing. So yeah, Solar is the one that's like keeping everyone in line, and Cyclops finally stands up to him, and then we see everyone else standing up to him. So anyway, like, yeah, I was like, oh wow. And he actually has been against the Avengers and Captain America and Quasar himself. And then we have this poor guy. I don't know how to pronounce his name, like Nuclo, I think. He actually radiates radioactive energy. I mean, he's not really a criminal. They put him in there because he radiates this nuclear energy, this radioactive energy, and he can't control it. And he has like the mind of a 2-year-old. And he is actually the son of Miss America and the Wizard, like Golden Age heroes, like from like Captain America's time. They were actually in an episode of Spider-Man. The original 90s animated series. I forget which episode, but yeah, he basically gathers up these Golden Age heroes in order to because I forgot why, but they make an appearance. Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch that and find out what was going on there because I don't quite remember. So anyway, the Wizards, Nemesis, in the end, actually absorbs his son's, the Wizard's son's nuclear energy radiation in order to make himself powerful enough to destroy the Wizard, which actually kind of cures the son of this, of leaking radiation, basically. Unfortunately, though, his mother, Miss America, and his dad, the Wizard, they die. Miss America dies when she gives birth to another child who's stillborn, and actually when she was pregnant with him, or she went to a nuclear radiation plant in order to turn off the fail-safes manually, which her power protected her, and the Wizard, his power protected him too, of that, being exposed and poisoned due to that, but it seeped in and got to her son. So he was born like that. So he's been basically in a cage almost his entire life. So with the Wizard's old nemesis, siphoning off his power for himself, he actually cured him of this, destructive power. Of course, he has gotten out of his cage at various points and wreaked havoc. But anyway, so just fascinating story. And then you have Claw, who is constructed of pure sound. And they have he's in this containment cell that's basically no sound can get in. He, communicates with this little board, and you see, don't trust them. Soon you'll be a prisoner like the rest of us. So they put Dazzler through all these tests. They have her, create lasers, dazzle burst, all kinds of things. And it's been a week. Everyone's trying to get a hold of her. Paul's trying to get a hold of her. Harry's trying to get a hold of her. Her grandmother's trying to get a hold of her. The Human Torch is trying to get a hold of her. And, they come back to her and say, okay, based on all these tests, we discovered that, one, there's no limit to the amount of power of energy you can absorb and turn into light. Two, what was two? Oh, two, we're thinking if given a song or a sound strong enough, you can actually absorb the energy and store it for later use. So, and they're like, so if we just run some more tests, and she's like, more tests? No, I am done. I've already been here a week, I'm done. And they're like, well, but you signed a form saying you would stay until we completed our research. And she's like, I did no such thing. And they're like, yeah, you did. It's right here. It's a perfectly legally binding document. And then she's like, oh, fine. Because they also, mentioned the whole mutant thing again. She's like, fine, I'm going to my room. I need, to decompress. So what she really does is she tries to escape. She blinds the guards, and what happens is Quasar is there. He's like, they told me that you try something like this. And she tries to use her power on him, and it does nothing to him. So she wears herself out, and she gives in and says, fine. And so the next day, she is in her stage costume and makeup. She said, I thought I would try to cheer myself up a little bit. Because, I'm here, and I'm still here, and doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to leave here anytime soon. So she goes by Claw's, containment unit again. And he types out this message to her. You should leave this area. What they're about to do to me is too horrible for anyone to watch. So basically, he's manipulating her. He's been manipulating her this entire time. And Dazzler starts to feel sorry for him because she's like, well, everyone thought Hulk was a monster, and he's actually really gentle and kind, and it just misunderstood because, we saw that in Dazzler 6 and 7. And so they're running these tests. They put these little prods in there, and what basically it barely, like, he can barely even feel them. It barely hurts, but he's putting on this show like it hurts, like, hurts like hell, basically. He even, says in the thought bubble, I can barely feel these sonoprobes, but the girl has no way of knowing that. So she feels bad. She's like, I can't just stand by and watch this happen. So she tells the guards to leave him alone, and they're like, he's fine. Really, this honestly does not hurt him. He barely even feels this. And she's like, I said leave him alone. And so she dazzle bursts them, and what happens is it cracks. Like, there's just like this minute little tear that happens to his cell, and a whisper gets in, and he uses that to escape. And he says, foolish girl, this is what you get for, even though you let me out of my prison, saved me, I'm going to, reward you by using my sonic cannon on you. And what it does is have, Dazzler just kind of glows. It doesn't really hurt. She's like, I don't understand what's happening to me. Like, why am I just glowing? So they tried to subdue him, the guards, but, the bullets, they just, like, vibrate, like, and, like, come apart, basically, before they even reach him. Um, yeah, and Quasar is the only one that can really stand up to him. And Claw's like, only your trickery imprisoned me the first time. You're not, you won't get the same chance. I spent all this time in my cell figuring out the exact vibrations I need to do in order to basically counteract all your powers. And that's what's happening here. He puts him in this light cage, gets out of it, then he uses his powers on Quasar. Like I said, he knows the right frequency to do this. And so Dazzler's like, what have I done? I can't believe that I was so naive, that I helped him escape. And she goes to find him and sees Quasar just laying there. And she's like, oh my gosh, and Claw's like, stand aside. And she's like, no, don't hurt him. You have your freedom. Just go. And Claw says, well, I know that he'll just be a thorn in my side for the rest of my life, so I need to get rid of him now. And Dazzler basically says, over my dead body. And she tries, to dazzle burst him, but he's like, my body's composed of sound. Like, light does not, like, light does nothing to hurt me. So she tries, like, rapid fire, like, light bullets, a maximum flash, laser, nothing. Like, she tries all this stuff, and nothing hurts him. So then he's like, feel the wrath of my power. And what happens is it just basically, Dazzler, since it's sound, and she turns sound into light, and he is, pure sound. His power is pure sound, vibration, sound waves. She just absorbs all of it. And what she ends up doing is absorbing him. And he's like, stop, what are you doing? And she's like, I can't stop it. I can't turn it off. And so she ends up absorbing him completely because he is made out of sound. And she just, she can feel like his energy inside of him. And it just makes her sick. She feels sick because pretty much she feels like she's murdered him because she absorbed him. She feels like a vampire, a monster. She's like, and she blames them because they are the ones that brought her here, forced her here, and made her, basically, this is how it ended up. This all happened because of them. And they're like, wow, that's amazing that you can do this. And now, and she's glowing and radiating and she has all this energy churning in her. And she's like, how do I get rid of it? And they're like, oh, well, you just need to release it safely in her lab while we do tests. And she's like, no, no more tests, no more labs. And she punches a hole basically through the complex in the mountain. And Quasar's like, wow, even I can't do that. And they're like, yeah, just no, it's okay. Just come back, to the lab. It'll be fine. And, you're wasting valuable time. We need to study you at your peak. And she's like, no, you morons, I'm not just an experiment. Claw was right about you. You guys are evil. You made me this way. You made me do this. This happened because you dragged me here. And she's using her powers to, like, fly, like float, like Quasar does. And unfortunately, though, she can't control it. And she's just like, I can't control my powers. I'm a menace. I'm a monster. I always used to wish I had powers like this, great power, but not like this, not like this. And then we see someone watching her from far away. And he says, she is the one in all the universe with the power my master needs. Soon, though it will cost her very life, she will do his bidding. And you can see at the end, at the bottom, it says Galactus. Which is fitting because we just did the Gambit being a herald of Galactus video not too long ago. So that's exciting. I mean, Galactus is one of those, world-ending huge villains that, yeah. So to have him in a Dazzler comic book as the villain, we'll see how that goes. I mean, like I said, it's been a while since I've read this series, so I don't remember exactly what happens. But like I said, I didn't remember this moment. I'd forgotten that she completely just absorbed Claw to the point where he didn't exist anymore. And now she feels like, and this really isn't ever mentioned again, really, outside of this series. And it's interesting because, yeah, she calls herself a murderer because she completely absorbed, So I feel like it's interesting because I feel like with, Rogue absorbing Ms. Marvel, I feel like Dazzler almost should be a little bit sympathetic to her in that instance. But of course, Rogue, she did it on purpose. Well, not on purpose. She didn't know that her powers would do that they would completely absorb. But again, Dazzler, she didn't know that her powers, when Claw attacked her, that her powers would completely just absorb him. So I feel like that's an interesting parallel between the two of them. And yet they're so, like, during this time period, of course, Rogue hates Dazzler because she has everything that Rogue has ever wanted. And of course, that makes Dazzler not like Rogue because Rogue keeps trying to kill her. So, and yeah, Rogue does appear in the Dazzler series and, issues down the road. So I'm really excited to get to those because, of course, Rogue's my favorite. But, I mean, Dazzler is up there because, of course, named my cat after her. Every time we talk about the Dazzler comics, I just think in my head Dazzler, like the cat. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this issue. Like I said, found this issue really interesting because I had totally forgotten that this happened. And like I said, it's not really spoken about outside of this run, this series, which I find interesting. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on what happened? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion about it because I find it really interesting. Like I said, totally forgotten about this moment that happened. So anyway, let's discuss, and I hope you join me for the future for more videos. And until then,